Well, I hope you all did not come with much expectations for this evening. I always refer to myself as the B team when you put me and Don Higgins together, but I'm happy to be here. But before we get started, I want everybody to take a minute and recognize Tracy and his team for, I want to tell you something, putting on events like this is very stressful. But when he did call me and I knew what the reason for that he was trying to do, that's the first reason that I said. So Tracy, thank you on behalf of everybody. Give him a round of applause. Everybody in the back hear me okay? We good, Austin? You ready to come talk? Well, I'm going to introduce you anyway. If you guys turn around and look, Ann and Austin Razor in the back. There's some very good friends of ours, both Don and I. They're also on the board of directors at Lester's Feet. So they came down, they live on the east side of Cincinnati, so they drove about 2.5 hours down here. And I'll talk a little bit about one of the other reasons we're here. And then I'd also, where's my wife at? Unfortunately, she has the worst job in the room, and that's living with me. So I appreciate her and her support with everything. It's honestly a little emotional, to be honest with you, with what this event ended up being. And Tracy was right. Most of the time when I get a request like this, it's not that I don't want to come talk deer hunting with people. It's just I simply don't have time. It's all I can do about 8 months in advance to even schedule myself to go to Shipshewana or the other events that Don goes to. But for some reason, when he texted me or sent me the message on Facebook, I'd never met Tracy. I mean, had we met? Sorry, have we ever met? Okay. Yeah, we had met, and I looked at my calendar and nothing was going on and said, yeah, we should be able to do that. And honestly, until Thursday, I couldn't have told you why I said yes to this event and this gathering. But Thursday at about 4:30, Lester's Feet got a random message on Facebook from this lady and reached out to Lester's Feet and said, hey, is anybody available to talk? And I said, sure, and went through back and forth, and she said that her 18-year-old daughter had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and her husband had been laid off from a chemical plant during COVID, and said, I don't know how your foundation works, but somebody told me to contact you. I said, great, where are you from? Just north of Huntington, West Virginia. That was Thursday, guys. So we said, well, lucky enough we're going to be there for Saturday. So at about noon, before a bunch of you got here, we met with that family back there in that kitchen and figured out a way that we're going to be able to help her family navigate the care of her daughter. So, it's amazing how we take for granted how God works in so many different ways. Whether you believe in Him or not, I assure you that He's going to open doors. And one of those doors that He's opened for me over the years is the hunting industry. And I'm the first to say I want no part of the hunting industry, but somehow or another I've been in and out of this thing for about 15 years. So you guys are going to help me first. So this is the first task. Raise your hand if you actually do listen to the podcast. I'm sorry that you all don't have anything better to do with your time. That's the first thing. Okay. Second thing is, how many of you are actually bow hunters? Raise your hand. Gun hunters. Public land hunters. Private land only hunters. Wow, that's an interesting demographic there. Usually I don't get that many. Okay. How many use expandable broadheads? Okay, good. I'm not here to talk about any of that today. No, I thought one of the things that connects us as hunters more than somebody, and I appreciate what Cameron did when he got up here. There's not many, how old did you say you were, 30? There's not many 30-year-olds that, whether he wants to be in the industry or not, he technically is, as an outfitter, will get up and say, I'm not going to tell somebody how to hunt, and I can't agree with him more. There's too much of that out there. So what I thought I would do today is just basically tell hunting stories. And I'm going to talk about some specific bucks, then talk about the lessons that I've learned with those specific bucks. It's not my place to tell you how to hunt, where to hunt, when to hunt, whether you want to hunt out of a tree saddle or a tree stand. That's your decision. So I'm going to start with the most controversial one to kick this thing off, and that's social media. It's the best thing in the world and it's the worst thing in the world, okay? And the funny thing is how many of you all have seen a Facebook post where somebody, whether they were teasing or whether they were serious, got on somebody for shooting a deer that was too young? Y'all ever seen that? That's the quickest way to be deleted off any Facebook friend of mine, whether you're saying it on my page or somebody else's. I saw this meme one time. I thought it was hilarious about the guy that gets on there and tells everybody that they're shooting too young a deer, and you go to his profile page and he's sitting there holding a little fork-horn basket rack. But I was listening to a podcast 2 or 3 days ago from Cameron Dare. Do you guys know who he is? He's like the content creator at Exodus Trail Cameras. And he got on there and talked about his story. He started hunting late in life. And he was actually embarrassed to post pictures on Facebook about what he was doing in the deer woods because people would criticize him for it. And one of the things that aggravates me most about this industry is we get what's called keyboard courage. And we sit back and we make these comments where 20 years ago, if you would have made comments like that, you would have gotten punched in the nose. It's as simple as that, right? There's no repercussions. It's given everybody a platform to absolutely be a jerk. So my challenge to you guys today is, if you're living your life with the passion and the hobby of hunting, you got to stay away and put this in perspective. If your goal is to be all about social media, not only to promote yourself or criticize others, get out. You want to promote and make the sport a better place? Don't comment at all if you got something bad to say, right? I want somebody to understand that deer hunting is about a journey. And I think wherever Tracy just walked off to, I don't know where he is, he said that was one of the things that he wanted to promote with this event, is the journey. I look up here and see these bucks up here. There's some absolute monsters. But that one might be my favorite one right there. It was somebody's first buck. And they had the courage to come in here. Whoever shot that thing needs to come back and see me later. I'll give you a free hat. Okay? That's what this sport is about. Now, you can get to the point in your journey where your objectives and your goals and your priorities change. Cameron talked about that. He went and said, I want to do public hand only. That's a goal of mine. I want to shoot recurve. That's a goal of mine. That gets supported. That doesn't get criticized. So my point to you all today, I shared this on the podcast the other day. If this is your MO, what's this guy talking about? Right? It's all himself. Does anybody know who this guy is? Any guesses? I have no idea either. I found it on the internet. I don't know who it is. So, Ann's laughing. Ann's our graphic designer, so she has fun with this. So I want to talk specifically about why this buck's up here and the story that I learned from it. This buck was one of my biggest Kentucky typical, and I saw this buck and was hunting him really, really hard through late September and October. And early season muzzleloader comes around. I'm sitting in a ladder stand looking over a big draw on the downwind side of a bedding area, hoping he's going to come out with his nose into the wind, go into the food plot. And this joker on muzzleloader Sunday comes out at 165 yards. Now, we take a lot of pride in how we shoot, what we shoot. And on a normal day, I probably would have squeezed one off at him. But the problem was I had about a 28 mile an hour crosswind. And I just could not bring myself to take a pot shot at him. Well, unfortunately, at that time in my life, I just shared the story. And it wasn't anybody commenting back, oh, you'll get him, don't worry about it. It was everybody had a stupid opinion about what load I should have been shooting to do it, how far I should have led him, what I should have done different, instead of saying, hey, man, you're going to get another crack at that deer. I deleted everything off that Facebook post, took it all down. That was one of the most discouraging things I ever had on social media because I was tore up about it. Did I make the right decision? Did I make the wrong decision? What should I have done? I could have had just an unbelievable Kentucky typical in the back of my truck, and I made a choice and had to live with it. Well, 3 weeks later, I ended up shooting him with a bow at 22 yards from the ground. The story ended up happening and filling itself out, but it was not to the benefit of my neighbors and friends and hunting community around us. So my first lesson that I'm going to give you that I learned is social media is a great thing. Like Cameron said, social media is not the problem. It's the people. Okay? You guys are in a position where you can influence, support, and take care of your fellow hunters. Use it for something good. Make Facebook be something good. Make TikTok be something good. And I tell you what, if you want to poke around at your buddies and say, oh, you should have given him another year, he was only 220, don't put it on my page because you're just getting deleted, okay? But awesome story about a experience that I went through, and it taught me a lot of lessons about social media. The second thing we're going to talk about is consider who you surround yourself with. And this cat right here is one of my best friends. And most people, if they think that I'm going to get up and talk about my inner circle of the people who I hang around with, talk about all the time, who you think I'm going to talk about usually? I mean, it's Don. I mean, I got probably one of the top 3 whitetail hunters in the country that I get to talk to about every day. But the bottom line is I look at Patrick, who's in this picture, as one of those people that's who I consider myself to be around, and a choice that I make. You know, this is a picture of Wes Delks and Don Higgins together. And Wes has this saying that he talks about all the time, and it is, you're the average of the 5 people that you're around the most, or your 5 closest friends. And think about that a little bit. I know there's some guys in here that are into baseball, travel softball with their daughters. I think we got a young softball player back there. I always told my girls that if you're the worst player on the team, you're in the wrong spot. If you're the best player on the team, you're playing at the wrong level. Your life is no different. If you don't challenge yourself and get around people that challenge you and push you to the next level, you're not surrounding yourself with people that's going to get you somewhere. The other side of that is if you're not bringing people behind you and pulling people with you, then you're not being a witness or a supporter to other people and growing other people. So when I hear people say you're the average of the people that you're around, that's what it should be. You should be right in the middle, right? I'm not always going to be the leader, okay? If I want to be the best golfer ever, how many people play golf in here? Does anybody play golf? I used to play golf, and I wasn't very good at it. But I always played golf with people that were better than me. Otherwise, there's only going to be 4 people in your foursome chunking it into the woods every time. Nobody's going to ever get better. And who you surround yourself with is extremely important. And I'm going to embarrass my friend Ann in the back with this next slide. She's really worried right now when she's looking at me about what I'm going to show. And the next slide is not going to be to brag or to say that Chasing Giants has gotten to the point we are today, but it's to explain something about someone who I consider that's in our circle, someone that challenges me. And Ann does the graphic design work for all of Chasing Giants in Real World. And we were working on this slide one day. These are the people that support Chasing Giants. These are the people that write a check to Chasing Giants. These are the people that also support Lester's Feet. And we have this slogan on the podcast that says, we're not about the hunting industry, we're about the hunting community. Don and I don't need the podcast. We both have so much other stuff going that it's not even something that we do for that reason. But we do partner with people. Why? Number 1, it's called value add in each of your jobs. Think about what you do for a living every single day. You're doing value add. You work in a factory. Your factory is buying raw material. You're transforming that and doing it, putting value and selling it to somebody else. You work in the service industry. You're providing a service to upsell and make money. The purpose of our podcast is to grow and build to help more people. We take a little bit, we make it into a lot to have a bigger umbrella to push back into the outdoor community. And you know what that young lady back there had the courage to me to say? She said, how do you have all of these sponsors that pay for advertising on your all's podcast when you say you're about the hunting community and not the industry? You got to think about that a little bit. I think we have a very good answer and a very good model and business plan, but having a young lady in my circle that's brave enough to challenge me on that and ask me that question, that's why she's in my circle. At that point, Don and I talked, and that's why we trust her with anything we have. You have to have people in your circle. You have to have people around you that's going to align with you. If you're an alcoholic, you don't go hanging out in the bar, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about Patrick specifically. Now, Patrick is a buck-killing machine. My grandfather, Lester, got me involved in hunting, but Patrick is, when you talk about guys like Cameron that all they think about is deer hunting, I'm honestly not that guy. I got too many other businesses and everything else going on. I love hunting, but Patrick's like Cameron. Absolute crazy. He never shuts up about it. And this picture was taken years ago. He's shot many, many more bucks than what's on this banner. But Patrick is an exact example of someone I surround myself with to make me better. Now, I'm going to tell a funny story about Patrick and my wife. We got this brave idea. Early season Kentucky, right? We got alfalfa fields everywhere. We wanted a round bell blind big enough to stand up in. Well, the redneck blinds that you can buy, you're still hunched down like this or having to shoot down. So I thought, I'm going to build me one. So this is on the basketball court in my backyard. And this thing's about 6'5" inside. We framed it up and put cattle panels and then erosion nets over it, had windows and everything. We were so proud of this thing, we were going to go and take it out. We're going to kill deer opening weekend out of this thing. Well, the problem was we didn't put it on a trailer. So that caused a little problem. It was on 4x4 skids, really heavy. Well, my buddy Patrick had an idea. He said, well, let's go get the bale forks on the back of the tractor. So I said, okay. So my wife actually took this picture and she said, I think you said, is this the last time I'm going to see you or something like that? And I said, nah, it'll be all right. So Patrick pulls out of the house and we go down the road and he pulls in across the road at the field and we're going out to the alfalfa field. And this is a restored 1586 International. So he had the bale forks up probably about 3-4 feet. And I had the bright idea I was going to hang out the side window and hold on to the back of the 3-point hitch. We weren't smart enough to ratchet strap it down or anything like that. That would be too smart. So he gets to the top of the hill, turns the tractor, and I felt her start going. Well, if you've ever seen one of them hamsters running inside of the little wheel, that's me rolling down the hill to the bottom of the hill. And we live in an area that's real rolling country. So I think I made it about maybe a half revolution keeping up with the hamster inside the wheel until I face planted and just boom, ba-boom, 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 all the way down the hill. That's the kind of the story of me and Patrick's relationship. If you listened to the podcast and heard about me having to jump off the tractor, blowing my knee, then my back, having to have 2 surgeries, it was him. Every time we're doing something, Casey just says, call me when you're hurt. But the thing about Patrick that shows the kind of person Patrick is, that picture that I showed you at the beginning, that was a stud Kentucky buck, right? I'm going to move back to him real quick so you can look at him again. For Kentucky, that's a shooter pretty much anywhere I hunt, don't you think? You all notice anything different when I put this picture up about him? What do y'all see different about that deer? See how small he is? Look at that little bitty body. What ended up happening with this deer was there's 2 mornings in a row right during the rut that I almost hit this deer with a car. One day, I think I was even driving Casey's Suburban. I go out on the main road. We live on a country road that's about 0.3 of a mile from the main road. So the way the bird flies, this deer was in the middle of US Highway 25, probably half a mile from our house. And he comes up off the road and just standing there. Locked the brakes up. I don't know if I hit him or just bumped him or he was 2 inches away. And he walked right off into this little ditch. And I'm not kidding. This area was probably about the size of tall weeds is where these guys have been scoring deer all day. And he wouldn't leave. And I'm sitting there going, holy crap, that was just a huge buck. He's just right here. He was right in front of I got a great look at him. So I kept driving. First person I called, hey, Patrick, you got this buck with the sticker points off his G2s? Picture of him? He goes, yeah, I haven't had a picture of him for quite a while. And I said, I just about hit him with the car. And we got to talking. What we thought was happening is he was chasing a doe. The doe got hurt or hit and rolled over into that ditch, and he refused to leave her. That was our guess, right? Next day, get up and go to work. Same exact place. He's standing right on the side of the road in the exact same place again. I thought, holy smokes. This joker's got a hot doe that got killed, and he just won't leave her. So I slow down, stop, and that deer turns. And the opposite side shoulder that you see in this picture, the entire skin and hide was completely gone. The shoulder blade was basically laying out, and he could barely walk. He had just got pummeled by a tractor trailer or something. He was hurt bad. So I told Pat, I was like, there's no food around. I was like, we got to throw the protein and the corn out just to try to get this deer over. So late muzzleloader season, we ended up, I'm not kidding, that deer had to lose 100 pounds. This thing, it looked like the size of a decent-sized dog. Patrick shot the deer. We took this picture. No one's ever seen a picture of that buck. Here's a guy that could have put that out on social media and made himself look like a rock star for shooting another giant Kentucky buck with a muzzleloader, and nobody would have ever known. I could have made those pictures look like anything. I mean, photographers can do whatever they want to make a picture look great on a buck. But he knew what the real story was, and he used his tag. Shot an awesome buck. I mean, he's a shooter anywhere. But he didn't oversell the story. How many of your friends would have spun that story into something else to do this, to give them credibility or them credit? So when you talk about surrounding yourself with key people, make sure you're surrounding yourself. This buck taught me a lesson about who my friend was. That slide of all those sponsors taught me a lesson of who a friend of mine is, and a fellow board member of Lester's Feed is, and a vendor to companies that we trust our brand with. That shows me who those people are. The next lesson is going to be a little bit more interesting. You are at the limit of your property you can hunt on how big of bucks you can kill. Period. Now, that's to say that you have a ceiling. You as a hunter can go and kill a certain size buck because the buck's got to be there, right? I also believe that you could have a fantastic property and absolutely ruin it by being stupid, okay? But when I first started hanging around with Don, understanding age structure was the most pivotal part of what I had to learn as a hunter. Because to consistently kill a big buck, you have to kill an old buck. Because there's just not that many examples genetically of an absolute stud world-class deer as a 3-year-old. Does that make sense? So that's pretty much what the whole podcast is really about. Killing a 6-year-old 128-inch buck in the mountains of West Virginia is probably harder than killing a 6-year-old 180 in Illinois in big ag country where you only have a little bit of pockets of woods. I'll give you all guys that. Hunting public land is tough. But until you focus on understanding what a mature buck is doing, and it is a different animal, you're not going to consistently kill that bigger animal. Does that make sense? So does anybody recognize that picture? Anybody recognize what deer that is? It was taken in 2016. This deer was 5 years old at the time. I don't know, and I don't try to be Don. I hope one day I'm like Don, where I'm passing 190-inch and 216-inch deer. But the story there is, very specifically, to understand what that deer was doing and what he was going to do. Don is one of the best in the country at understanding age structure. Okay? So this deer, I think it was in the high 80s when he passed him, turned into that the next year. Okay? And I don't expect anybody to pass him as a 5-year-old. I mean, that's just, Don he talks about how Smokey just had that personality that was different than most bucks. He was a homebody. He knew he was going to stay. But understanding age structure, the first 200-inch buck that Don shot, he'll talk about it. He got on it, he hunted it, and it was on a neighbor's property. Smokey was the first one that he could say that he basically created habitat to attract him and keep him. But the genetics are the genetics, right? Understanding age structure and how to set up a property and create bedding or find bedding and keeping intrusion out is what our MO has always been. And there's a lot of other different styles, and that's okay. But no matter what style you're hunting at, and I think Cameron will even agree with me on this, if you don't react and adapt to how a mature buck is acting, and you're hunting like you are hunting 3-year-olds, you're never going to consistently hunt the other ones. Okay? So this, when I went up, Smokey was shot on a Sunday night. I actually got to go up on Monday morning and helped take the pictures. But the other story that's involved in the Smokey story was when did he shoot Smokey? I think it was middle of October 2017. I was hunting a deer on another property about 30 miles away, and the neighbors poked a hole in it. I was pretty devastated. What am I going to do? He's like, why don't you come over and shoot this 9-year-old that I have? When somebody says a 9-year-old, you're like, yeah, whatever, a 9-year-old. He's like, no, he's really 9. It's like, come on. He's like, you remember that deer? We saw him 3 or 4 times this year. I'm like, that 6-pointer? He's like, yeah. So we start looking through the trail camera pictures of him, and this is him in 2010. Just a scrawny, racked, should have been shot many, many years ago. And I didn't have all the trail camera pictures with me. Most of them are head on here, but we basically thought he would be 3.5 in this picture. His body was just too big, even though his rack was small. So that was in 2010. In 2011, he had his biggest rack he ever had of his life. 2014, he got a little bit smaller. 2015, he's looking even worse. 2016, 2017 rolls around. And Don's like, he's 9. I'm like, I'll shoot him. It's like when you look at the actual data, a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old buck is probably just about as rare as a 190 plus. So I ended up going back up to Don's on another trip in early November and hunted him for about 4 days. And that trip up there was the first time that we'd really sat down and talked. Real World had gone under had started to go under a little bit of a transition with the ownerships, and Don and I had started to confide a little bit more in each other about what my role was and the brand and where I thought we could take the company. And the morning we sat in that stand was the day that he sold his tree business. And Don's talked oftentimes about how he did all of his CRP work and everything, and we were actually hunting that morning, and he had to leave about 9 o'clock. To go to Effingham to sign his papers to sell the tree business. And we had seen this buck earlier that morning running a doe down by the creek, and I said, I'm just going to stay in the blind and see if he comes out to know where to hunt tonight. He wasn't even back out to the road walking out, and he walks out and I shoot him. So when we ended up getting him caped out, we sent his teeth off to deerage.com. They forensic aged the inside of the teeth, and he actually came back 10 years old. So I start thinking about what was this deer doing different. It's not that he would have been a target buck for Don, but you all have heard, if you listen to the podcast, about how Don's belief in culling deer is such a vital part of his management practice. That deer should have been killed back in 2011 or 12. What was this deer doing that was different once he got to 5? Don's place is the least intrusion of any property I've ever been on. But this deer was consistently nocturnal. He was acting different. It wasn't till he shot Smokey 3 months prior that he even got up and was chasing as much, because Smokey wasn't there going to thump him. Okay? The only reason I still believe that this deer didn't die of old age was because he shot Smokey 3 weeks earlier. So and he's actually hanging right there. Tracy asked me to bring a buck, so he's actually the smallest buck I have mounted, but he's actually my favorite. We'll get him down after a bit. You all can see the white in his face. But my point there is, if you want to consistently kill big buck, understand age structure before you worry about the size of the antlers. I promise you'll be more successful in the end if you start learning how to hunt a buck with age structure versus just antler size. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to get put in a situation where 2 3-year-olds are going to walk out. One of them's going to be a 135-inch 8-pointer. One of them's going to be a 150-inch 10-pointer. And I can tell you in the state of Kentucky, I know which one's getting shot by 99% of people. Okay? All right, so big bucks and different bucks. My next lesson is sort through the gimmicks. Now, this is hilarious. I posted something on social media recently and asked people, I was like, what's the biggest gimmick you ever used or saw or whatever? Unfortunately, I didn't realize that some of the stuff people posted was actually stuff that other people used and still believed in, and it got a lot of controversy and stuff going back and forth. But I'm going to show you some of them. I just thought it was hilarious. Anybody ever heard of the acorn crusher? Does anybody use the acorn crusher? Or you're not going to admit it while you're here? I guess this thing is two pieces of plastic that you rub together to make the sound of a deer eating acorns. Am I right? I think I'd never seen it, but I just thought it was fascinating. The next one was camouflage. And I heard a story here recently about a guy that went and hunted. Cameron would probably laugh at this one. He went and hunted an outfitter. And this outfitter was walking across the field, and he's making him eat this camouflage as they were walking to the stand. You got to do this. Keep your scent and your breath down. Well, the dude went up in a ladder stand, and the outfitter went out, and he's like pointing at a scrape over right here, 23 yards, right here. Then he walks over to this side and said, over here, 36. So this dude's tromping up every shooting lane in it, but he's worried about what kind of breath the guy has up in the ladder stand. I thought that was fantastic. The next one I thought was funny was the urination bottle, because heaven forbid nobody has access to a Gatorade bottle to put, and you got to go buy a special bottle for it. And I'm not sure what kind of decoy that was, but somebody sent that one to me. Had anybody ever heard of this thing? You put it, it's like a blow-up person in your tree stand, so when you leave it, it looks like somebody's sitting there, so the deer get used to there being a blob up in a tree. Heaven forbid we put our tree stand somewhere where it's got cover instead of needing something like this. I thought that was good. This was a good one. This is a tube that you run down the tree, so when you blow on your grunt tube, the noise is actually on the ground and not up in the tree, because you're going to trick that deer. But maybe my all-time favorite is called the feeder repeater. Has anybody ever heard of this one? If you're in a bait state, you'll love this one. So this is a little handheld little disc. It's almost like the smart button from Staples, or the easy button from Staples, and you hit this and it sounds like corn hitting the legs of a feeder. So when you hit it, all the deer think that the feeder just cut on, so they come in running to go get their feed. People buy this stuff. It's amazing. So I didn't put this guy's picture up on here, but the story is too good not to tell. We're up in Northeast. Has anybody heard of the king buck? So I don't want to bash anybody. I mean, he's got his own business. But this feller got up in front of, I don't know how many hundreds of people, to give his speech on mature bucks. The first thing that comes out of his mouth is he said, if you ever get a picture, how many's ever gotten a picture of a deer going back licking himself or biting, ticks off, and he has his leg up and he's got back, you know what I'm talking about? He's got his leg up with his head turned. He said, the biggest lesson you ever need to know with trail cameras is if you ever got a picture with a buck exposing himself to the camera, that's not the king buck, because a king buck would never expose the vulnerability of his genitals to a camera. He said that in front of everybody. It's in his book. I'm just like, holy cow, this is going to be good. So we here at this trade show, and it was a real world booth. So we had a skid of mineral, and some feller comes up and says, I want to buy, 20 bags or something like that. It was too much to pack through the trade show hall. So I went back to the office and said, can I borrow a pallet jack? So I had the bright idea to just take the pallet jack and jack it up and drag it down the aisle and out to the back door. Well, guess whose booth was beside the back door? It is the king buck. So he's out doing these live demonstrations down the aisle of the trade show hall. And I'm not kidding, he was telling everybody that when you get to your stand needs to be 30 yards inside the woods, 25 yards to the east of the big rub, the king buck rub. I don't know how he defined that. But he said when you get to the edge of the woods, you have to walk in at a slow pace with your foot approximately 22 inches off the ground and stomp. And you stop for 1 second. And then your next step, you have to do the same thing and stomp. And that's how you get to your tree stand. Well, the king buck's going to hear you going to your tree stand. He's going to come wanting to fight, and then you shoot him. Funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Folks, the bottom line is there's a lot of products, and technology keeps evolving and getting better and better and better. I'm not going to tell anybody what to hunt with, a crossbow, a gun, tannerite. That's your decision. Whatever's legal, I'll support it. But there's so many people in this industry that's telling you a quick fix for one thing, and that's learning how to kill a big deer. There is no big fix. The golf industry sells new drivers every year because it's going to make you hit a golf ball farther or straighter. It never does. You still are a hack golfer like I am. There's diet things that happen every year that says we're going to lose weight. Best thing ever on the market, guess what? I'm still fat. It don't matter, right? We got to start figuring out what works for you and quit cutting through the gimmicks. If something's promising you to get somewhere faster or quicker, I guarantee you it's a gimmick. The most important lesson that deer hunting has taught me is you have to use it to find a way to help others. This picture is of a young man that won the Lester's Feet raffle and got to hunt on Don's property. Don gave him a whatever you want to shoot, as long as it wasn't the 2-3-year-old 170s that he's letting grow. Those are the only two he wasn't allowed to shoot all week. But, I find it interesting that when we put ourselves first in something that we're doing, we never seem to really achieve what we want to get out of it. And I don't know why that is, but one of my heroes, anybody know who that guy is? That's Matt McPherson. That's the owner of Matthews. And he basically goes around everywhere he talks and quotes two different scriptures that we use on the podcast a lot. To whom much is given, much is required. This guy made all the money he wants in country music industry. He's a songwriter. Started Matthews, started Mission, started Lost Camo. All of that money is made to fund missionaries elsewhere around the world. Don consistently uses a phrase that says, if you want to be blessed, be a blessing to someone else. So what we've tried to do with Chasing Giants isn't to draw attention to any of us. It's to try to give opportunities for other people. It's to try to gather what you guys are here today to do, and that's make a difference in somebody's life. Because God's going to open the door for that family to walk in here at noon that's got a 17, 18-year-old daughter fighting breast cancer, and they don't know how to pay their bills. Did you all know that? That's why you all were here today? I didn't know it till the other day. God's going to continue to open up opportunities whether you believe it or not, but when you focus inward on yourself, you're never going to see the benefit of it. I'm not here to preach, but I want each of you to just scan those two scriptures on the front. Chasing Giants, Lester's Feet, Real World is all about faith-based. We're trying to do what God wants us to do through the things that we love. When you put selfish ambition or yourself ahead of everybody else, you're never going to reap the full benefit of what God can do in your life. And this is just a very simple graphic that you guys don't understand in the world what it means. But when I first started with Real World, that's what the logo looked like. And they actually hired me to rebrand the company. And we rebranded into Wildlife Products. This was actually when we started doing mineral. Outdoors, we rebranded that. Chasing Giants kind of came as a morph out of that. But it wasn't till we put Lester's Feet as the focus in front of everything that we're here to use this platform, our community, to set and raise money and give to families who need it, that the rest of it blew up. Our product at Real World hasn't changed since the very beginning. The people have had a few changes, but not much. What's different? It's because we started putting others in front of ourselves, and the business has blown up. Don's business has blown up. Chasing Giants has blown up. And I have no doubt about it, the reason that it's gotten so big is because our priorities have changed from being this, like that guy that I found on the internet, to trying to find somebody else that's going to help us. So Tracy asked me to talk about Lester's Feet just real quick. That's kind of why we're all here today, is to raise money for this. This vision started on accident. I say we outran our headlights so fast. We went to help a family that had two little girls that had leukemia at the same time. They were having to live in an apartment, and we just wanted to step in and pay some rent for them for a couple months. It grew. We started talking about it on the podcast and said, we're looking for ideas. All of the listeners, all of the hunting community started saying, we want to help, we want to help. So we decided, hey, we're going to do a raffle. Don's going to raffle off a hunt on his farm. I'm going to do a velvet hunt on my farm. Let's see if we can raise 20 grand. Within a month, we're at 40 grand. I thought, oh no, this is a little bit too much out of our league. We had to quickly start getting our ducks in a row, starting a nonprofit foundation. This process, guys, usually takes, just to get the approval for a 501(c), is about 10 months to a year. It took us a while to get all of our paperwork ready, get our marketing collateral to align with how the attorneys wanted, and somehow through our federal government, our nonprofit got approved in less than 4 weeks over the holidays. So this is a full nonprofit foundation. Our wheelhouse is to identify families who have kids with life-altering illnesses and tell that family that your first priority is to take care of that child, even if you can't work. We're going to subsidize and help you get through it by taking care of your monthly expenses while you focus on that child. Now, outside of that, our bylaws are written strategically to where if we run across a different situation, if it's the right thing to do, we can help with that. So we've committed to paying for a service dog for a family that needs a service dog. We've bought a prosthetic. We've paid vehicles off. We've fixed vehicles. The family that was in here this morning, that mom's going to have to take off work. The dad got laid off. We're going to help them with their monthly expenses. As of right now, we have, I guess I should have done a really good job as the head of this organization to know exactly how many families we have on payroll right now. But this is just some examples of what, if you contribute to the 50-50 raffle, you buy a hat or t-shirt in the back, or you make a donation, these are the types of families that we're talking about. This kid up here on the top left, that's Braylon. He's just up the road in Ohio. He had leukemia and just had his last treatment. His hometown made a big parade. He got to the school for a basketball game, and the kids came out and presented him his Letterman jacket. But these are the types of families that we have identified and been able to help with your all's help. But what is it that's tied all of this together? It's that a bunch of outdoorsmen have come together and said, we love hunting, we love getting together, we love talking about these deer that we hunt, we shoot, we miss. We love teasing people about whether they hunt out of a tree saddle or a tree stand. We love picking on the guys that don't hunt public because it's harder. But at the end of the day, if we're using this hobby that we all love to find a way to help somebody else, you're going to be more successful. We're going to raise more money and more families that we're going to help. So the hunting has really taught me those 5 things. This next picture right here is a lot of years apart. That's my grandfather, Lester Schickel, in the middle. So I think I was 18 in the picture to the left. That's actually me. I was half the man I am today, this way. But that was my first buck. Shot him with a bow, high country, Supreme, 30-inch, 25-12 aluminum arrow right through the butthole. Didn't know what I was doing. Called my grandfather. I got my first buck. Oh, yeah. We talked about it for an hour. I'd call my grandfather after every deer that I shot, and we'd talk about it. He thought it was so cool. He was the first one to ever get me into hunting. The picture on the right is my largest Kentucky buck. It's a non-typical. Hunted that buck all spring or all early season with a bow. Ended up shooting him with a 300 wing mag at about 6 yards. Just how it goes. But that was the last buck that I got to call my grandfather and tell him about. So those 2 pictures with my grandfather in the middle kind of set the tone for me. There's not a time that I'm in the woods that I don't think about him. The name of Lester's feet was named after my grandfather. He came from a home life that he was abused. He lied on his military entrance paperwork, lied he was old enough to join the Navy, was a gunner on the front of an amphibious assault boat in the Pacific Ocean during World War II, driving up on those beachheads, shooting people. He got out of the Navy, got drafted, pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates, blew his arm out, became a law enforcement officer, and then farmed. What more could you want as a childhood hero? A war hero, a pro baseball player, law enforcement, farmer. He had all the things. He was my idol. And he wore size 14 or 15 shoes. Lester's feet is just a way that I can honor him and saying we're doing something with my family to continue the legacy and fill his shoes. But the thing that I think about most with my grandfather is as he was getting ill, we would rush into Northern Virginia to go visit him. The doctors say it was about time. He was on dialysis. Thought we were going to lose him. One time we went in, he ended up pulling out. He had never made himself right with the Lord. And he said, now it's time. So somehow we got access to a church that night. We drug him into the front of the church, somehow got him carried up to the top. He couldn't hardly even stand by himself. And I went up and carried my grandfather into a baptistry and we baptized him. When we pulled him up out and I'm drying him off and trying to get his clothes on him, he looked at me and he said the thing that I'll never forget. Don't wait as long as I did to do the right thing. I don't know where any of you are with the Lord. I don't know where any of you are at with your wife. I don't know where any of you are at with your kids, co-workers, friends, family. Don't wait another day. Don't wait another minute to try to do the right thing and make things right. You might not have another chance. If Lester's Feet is just a small portion of what we can do as a brotherhood of hunters to come together and help something, that's great. But when you leave here today, the most important thing I can ask you is don't wait till it's too late, because that's the most important thing I learned from my grandfather. That's all I got. Thank you.